During a romantic yacht trip, a young couple encounters a terrible storm that changes their lives forever. The movie, based on true events, begins with an intense scene inside a partially flooded cabin. A young woman named Tammy regains consciousness. Her face is covered in blood. The chaos around her is overwhelming, and the water level is slowly rising. Looking around, Tammy calls out for her companion, Richard, but he is nowhere to be found. Removing her life jacket, she struggles to climb up to the deck. In front of her lies the tilted yacht with a broken mast, drifting aimlessly in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. The narrative then shifts back 5 months earlier to sunny Tahiti in 1983. Tammy arrives on the island aboard a small yacht where she works as a cook. After clearing customs, she admits that she has no specific destination in mind. She's simply drawn to the freedom of traveling the world. To fund her adventures, Tammy takes on various odd jobs. She repairs boats, helps with maintenance, and whenever she has free time, enjoys surfing. One day, a yacht belonging to Richard, a sailor who jokingly describes himself as looking for Caribbean mermaids, docks at the pier where Tammy is working. She helps him moor the boat, and from that moment, their paths begin to intertwine. Their acquaintance deepens over dinner aboard Richard's yacht, which doubles as both his home and his means of travel. He shares stories about sailing the seas and ocean solo, relishing the sense of freedom and connection to nature. Tammy relates deeply to his passion, though her own travels are usually with a full crew. Before long, they venture out to sea together to enjoy a day of sailing. Despite being a cook by trade, Tammy demonstrates confident yacht handling skills. The story then returns to the present, where Tammy finds herself alone after the disaster. Desperately searching for Richard, she sends out distress signals over the radio, but no response comes. Using binoculars, she scans the horizon, but all she sees is endless ocean. Overwhelmed by despair, she collapses onto the deck crying. The audience is transported back to happier times. The couple is seen hiking up a scenic trail that leads to a narrow gorge with a mountain river. Tammy suddenly strips down and leaps into the water from a cliff, prompting Richard to follow her. Her prolonged absence underwater alarms him, and he dives in to find her playfully hiding at the bottom. The two frolic in the water before retreating to a tropical beach, where they relax on pristine white sand under the shade of a solitary palm tree, savoring the tranquility and each other's company. The joyful memories are interrupted by suspicious noses. Grabbing her binoculars, Tammy spots a lone lifeboat in the distance. Hoping it's Richard, she tries to start the engine of the sinking yacht, but a sail caught on the starboard side prevents the vessel from moving. Using bolt cutters, she cuts the sail free but loses her balance and falls into the water, barely avoiding drowning. Tammy resurfaces only to see that the current has pushed her away from the yacht. She swims desperately to catch up and, with great effort, manages to climb back aboard. On board, she uses duct tape to patch up parts of the yacht. After clumsily sealing the holes, Tammy pumps water out of the cabin and begins the arduous task of securing a second mast to rig a makeshift sail. As the damaged boat drifts slowly in the direction of the prevailing wind, she discovers with dismay that her supply of fresh water has run out. Soon, the yacht reaches an overturned lifeboat where an unconscious man is lying motionless. Tammy secures herself with a rope for safety and dives into the water to rescue her beloved. She pulls him onto the yacht, trying to revive him, and notices a severe wound on his leg. Overcome with emotion, she sobs on his chest, relieved that he is still alive. As she tries to make him more comfortable, she realizes he has more injuries, broken ribs and bruises covering his body. In a flashback, Richard's cabin walls are shown adorned with photos of his and Tammy's travels together. During one such moment, he gives her a gifted dress. Tammy wears it for a romantic dinner at an exotic town's restaurant. Over dinner, Tammy shares her story about how she ended up living the carefree life of a wanderer without a permanent home. After their meal, the two enjoy a dance, and during a slow song, Richard invites Tammy to join him on a round-the-world trip aboard his yacht. They begin planning their journey together. While shopping at the market, they encounter Richard's old friends, who ask him to deliver their yacht from Tahiti to California since they're flying to London. Without consulting Tammy, Richard agrees, as the job comes with pay and to return tickets to the island. Naturally, this decision doesn't sit well with Tammy, leading to an unpleasant argument. She doesn't want to go back home. Richard considers turning down the offer. However, after visiting the luxurious yacht, which stands in stark contrast to his self-built boat, they both agree to take on the task. Tammy even writes a letter to her mother, informing her of a brief visit back home. Soon after, they set sail from Tahiti, enjoying the crimson sunset as they embark on their journey. As they drift across the ocean, they discover they've veered off course, heading far north of shipping lanes, air routes, and even the designated search area. With no one knowing their location, the chances of being found seem non-existent. Only a miracle could lead to their rescue. By calculating their speed, and checking wind patterns. The survivors debate their next move, attempt to fight the wind and reach California, or follow the current and aim for one of the Hawaiian islands. Tammy steers the yacht toward Hawaii. Later, she manages to repair the water supply system, temporarily postponing the threat of dehydration. However, their food supplies remain limited. 5 days after the disaster, Tammy realizes they're drifting off course again, possibly due to a damaged steering mechanism. The situation escalates as tensions rise, and the two begin to argue. To increase their chances of survival, Tammy ties a rope around her waist and dives under the yacht to free the rudder, which is entangled by a piece of sail. She repeatedly dives, but struggles to release the fabric. Eventually, she succeeds. By now, they've been drifting for 10 days. Tammy rummages through the partially flooded cabin, gathering anything useful. She finds sunscreen and applies it to Richard to protect him from sunburn. She also tends to his leg wound, which looks increasingly worse in their dire conditions. Supplies continue to dwindle. Water and canned food will last no more than a week. Richard points to a harpoon, suggesting they try fishing for food, but Tammy, a vegetarian, refuses to kill fish on principle. Richard argues that without food, they won't survive, and he, with broken ribs and a wounded leg, is in no condition to fish. Reluctantly, Tammy agrees. Wearing fins, she dives into the water around the yacht to catch fish. But the task proves nearly impossible, as the clever fish easily evade her attempts. Soon rain begins to fall, allowing them to replenish their water supplies. They've now been adrift for 18 days. While searching the cabin again, Tammy discovers a hidden stash of alcohol and cigars. With nothing else to celebrate, they throw an impromptu party. Later, Richard apologizes to Tammy for dragging her into this nightmare, expressing his guilt and regret. The story flashes back to the past. During an evening conversation, Richard proposes to Tammy, and she accepts. He slips a handmade ring onto her finger, promising to give her a real engagement ring once they reach land. Fast forward to 29 days adrift in the ocean. Waking in the middle of the night, Tammy spots glowing lights in the darkness. Cargo ship lights heading straight for their small vessel. She fires signal flares, but due to the ship's proximity, the crew fails to notice her. The cargo ship passes, leaving their yacht in its wake. But then the lights vanish into the night, and Tammy realizes she is hallucinating. She breaks down in a fit of hysteria, but it doesn't last long. Richard tries to comfort her as best as he can. However, his condition is worsening. He spends most of his time sleeping, barely responsive when awake. In another flashback, the wind starts picking up. A bird lands on the yacht but is soon released by the couple. The wind grows stronger. Richard checks the weather report on the radio and hears a storm warning about a major hurricane. Using a map, he determines the hurricane's path. Tammy suggests they change course to avoid the storm, and Richard agrees. She adjusts the rudder to steer clear of the storm front while Richard secures the rigging. Soon, massive waves rise, tossing the boat up and down. Richard struggles with the sail, trying to take it down, but he needs Tammy's help. It's too much for him alone. The radio confirms that the hurricane, named Raymond, has been classified as a category 4 storm. As Richard steers, Tammy calls for help and deploys the emergency radio beacon. One of the sails comes loose during a large wave, and Tammy moves along the side of the boat to secure it. When she returns, a towering wave looms over the boat. Richard sends Tammy to the cabin while he remains at the helm. The boat drops into a vertical descent, causing Tammy to fall and Richard to be slammed against the mast. This is the moment where the movie began. 33 days adrift in the open ocean. The wind begins to pick up again, and Tammy fears another storm is coming. She constructs a makeshift shelter from a sail, but the storm never arrives. Lying next to Richard, who is feverish and weak, Tammy tells him stories about her past. The next morning, Richard wakes Tammy from an exhausted sleep. Half asleep, she confesses her love for him and tells him she'll have to let him go. The camera pans to the seat at the stern where Richard had been lying, but it's empty. All this time, Richard was a figment of Tammy's imagination. She remembers how he once told her that loneliness as he can cause hallucinations within days. Fragments of the last few weeks flash before her eyes. Moments when she thought she was talking to her would-be fiancé. Day 41 adrift. A bird lands on the bow of the yacht, and it takes Tammy a moment to realize it's a sign. Land is nearby. She looks around, trying to determine the direction, but the bird flies off. Using binoculars, she spots the outline of an island. Soon after, a ship appears on the horizon. Tammy fires a flare into the sky, and on the second shot, the ship changes course toward her, breaking the silence with its horns. The crew delivers fresh fruit and tows the yacht to safety. In the next scene, Tammy is shown riding in a taxi through a city. She has returned to Tahiti, where Richard's self-built boat remains. Inside the cabin, photographs of their travels together serve as the only memory of her potential husband, who died shortly after proposing to her. She recalls the time they spent together, tears streaming down her face. In the final scene, Tammy walks onto the beach wearing the dress Richard had given her. She releases a white flower into the waves, identical to the one he once gave her. The film concludes with credits and archival photos and videos. Richard drowned during the storm at the age of 33. Tammy spent 41 days alone at sea. She was 24 at the time. To this day, she continues to sail. And so the movie ends. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more films.